It's hard to believe that it's already been a year, and I think this is a really good time to sit down with Chief Randall Taylor. Thank you so much for making time for us. We were just talking about that time. It's been a year. Does it seem like it?
Well, sometimes it does and sometimes it doesn't. Things are still fresh in my mind from when that occurred, and we've had recent contact with some of those families, so it kind of keeps it upfront and personal.
You've seen a lot in your career. You've had a pretty long career. Have you ever seen anything like this?
No, not to that magnitude. So this is my 34th year. So obviously I've seen multiple fatalities, but nothing like that.
Take me back to that night, that day. Where were you when you first got the call?
I was at home when I originally got the page, and it's what typically happens when those pages come out. I usually get a call from one of my staff people advising me on what they've got going on, and that occurred there. So I got dressed, a little more appropriate dressed, and went out there to FedEx, and kind of standoffish, waiting to see what was going on. By that time, they already identified that the threat was no longer a threat. So I was just out there, talking to some of my people, talking to victim assistants in the chaplain's office, and kind of keeping the mayor's office advised of what we had and different things. And the biggest difference with that one was I was there initially, and then I had to come back the next morning and to stay with those families, as different families were finding out whether or not their loved ones were okay or not. I was out there for quite a bit of time, so it's different.
Your officers are highly trained for many different situations. What's the toughest part about responding to incidents and events like this?
Well, our officers, the dispatchers, IMS, all those people did a fantastic job out there. Obviously, there's concern when you're entering that, which is where most of our training comes in. How do you deal with the threat? How do you to get people out of there that you can save? And then once that threat has been neutralized, what do you do from there? But I think in that case, the biggest thing to me that we're not always as on top of is just the emotional impact that's going to have. So for me, being with those families for all the hours on that following day really took a toll, and I wanted to make sure that my officers were getting the help that they need to get that out, and that's something that we've still been working on.
I don't think people realize how much time you all, and especially you specifically, got a chance to spend with families. I mean, you have a family of your own. What do you say? Like when you have to have these conversations and that silence, that lull point, that's always hard, what do you say?
Well, yeah, with that situation, we had so many families there at the hotel that were waiting to hear what was going on. That process took a while. And so you'd see these families get notice that their loved one either wasn't working that day, or they were working at a different location, or they were able to at least get out without injury. So you had a lot of rejoicing going on. But then as that number got smaller and smaller, those families knew that the news was probably not going to be as good for them, and that was very difficult. And I spoke with all of them. I don't honestly remember what I said. I know I was probably at a loss for words at that time, because what do you say? You don't really know. But as that number got smaller, you knew that this was probably going to be bad news, and then I just felt we had to be there for them.
The atmosphere that we were in as a nation at that point, did that add to trying to respond to such a horrific event?
Well, most of our concern was within the community, because it's FedEx, right? Everybody either has someone who works at FedEx or knows someone who works at FedEx, or, I had kids that worked at FedEx at one point. So FedEx in itself is huge, but it impacts so many different areas of Indianapolis and outside of it, that there was a genuine concern for what was going on there. So we pretty much kept our eyesight on the local. We knew national was going to be coming in, and we had those different meetings with them as well. But really, we just wanted to make sure that the Indianapolis and surrounding community was taken care of.
A year later, and the work is still not done, what would you tell people that you all are still working on and trying to figure out, or trying to just assist?
Most of it has been on the assistance side. So just within the last couple of weeks, we've had contacts with some of the family members from that are still kind of struggling. They're asking us to put together a FedEx specific work group so they can talk about things, and we're of course willing to help them out with that. Our victim assistance unit was there from the get-go, as well as the chaplain's office, and so we continue to have those conversations, and we'll continue to do that till it's no longer needed.
Give me an idea of the timeline of work that had to happen with IMPD after this horrific incident.
Well, a lot of it had to do with the crime scene, obviously. You know, we knew, even though we believed at that time that the shooter was down and deceased, you still have to run that investigation. So you had to get the investigators over there to the crime scene, and then of course the coroner's office had their things that they had to do before they could positively identify bodies. That took a little bit of time. Most of it had to do with crime scene maintenance and eventually getting people back in there to get their belongings, to get their vehicles and those kind of things. Those took a while. And then you had the investigation of the suspect and what all had gone on there, and what kind of contacts we had, and worked with the FBI on that and trying to figure out if there was a hate crime nexus to this, what was his motivation, what could we glean from that. So all those things took an extended period of time, and then of course making sure that the victims that died in that, those surviving family members were taken care of. And really, honestly, hasn't stopped yet.
You take this approach of wanting to understand why crimes happen in order to be able to eliminate them. When we look at something like this, and you guys do a lot of studying, what have you found of why things like this happen?
Shortly after this happened, I was out at the FBI Academy and was able to talk to some people about this. And it's a fascinating study. Unfortunately, the study usually happens after an event has occurred. Sometimes it gives you a way to get in front of it. But when we spoke before, and I've talked about the crime here locally in Indianapolis, it's usually just someone getting upset and figuring that I got to pull this trigger to solve this problem, which makes no sense to me. But some of those things may be a little bit easier to get hold of, to get a grab of, because it may be just getting someone help with their emotions. Someone like this guy, probably more deep-seated mental health issues that I don't know that we would have been able to stop. But it doesn't mean we shouldn't continue to look. We need to try to find out what's going on with people. Are there ways that we can keep them from doing these things? And I just don't know the answer to all of that yet.
Sure, I think that's what probably makes people the most...
It's frustrating. It is. It's very frustrating, because I don't know that we have all the tools needed necessarily to get someone, demand that they get some help, right? And that's where part of the problem is. If it's an option, then there's probably a number of people who could use that help won't take that option because they don't feel they need it. Sometimes you look at something like this and you think, man, if there was a way that we could have mandated that person got some, not outpatient help, but actually intensive help, then maybe it doesn't end up that way.
Another thing that I feel like this allowed us to do was really get educated about the Sikh community, because a lot of folks didn't realize how vibrant of a community we have here in Indianapolis and the surrounding area. That was a teaching point. Was it a learning experience for you and your officers as far as how to respond to that community? We
try to identify the different communities and make sure that we have a number of contacts in that community. And we did. KP Singh has been around for a long time, and fortunately, we all have his number. And then he did a masterful job of getting us in touch with other people in that community. And we've met with them a few times. We were just there last Sunday for a prayer vigil that they had. And we've kept up with them, which is a good thing. But they are very vibrant and more numerous than I originally thought.
You've been a leader in this city for a while. I know you're a man of faith, you're a family man. What would you tell these families, as well as all the people that have been impacted by this, even a year later? What would you tell them? How would you encourage them for the future?
I've told them, stay strong, vent. It's like I've told people in the past, when I experienced FedEx and when I was out there for that period of time, I've been in law enforcement for 34 years. I've seen multiple murders before, but this one was very different. This one, the fact that I was with those families for that period of time and saw the pain. When I left that scene and went home, I would tell people, typically I can take a shower. By the time I'm out of the shower, I feel a little bit better about myself and can move on. That was not the case here. When I got out of the shower this time, it was still heavy on my heart. And I shared with my wife what I was going through, and I just cried. And we prayed, and it's exactly what I needed. And so I tell people the same thing. You've got to get it, just like I've told the officers, you can't let that stuff sit on you. You've got to, trusted friend, ministerial staff, spouse, significant other, whatever, you've got to share that. And I think most of them have. But for those families, I just remind them that, look, you're not going through this alone. We're still here. Even though we may not have known each other before this, we're family now. So we're going to take care of you, and let's work it together. And people handle it different, right? Some people get over a little quicker than others, but whatever boat you're in from that standpoint, we're going to be there for you. And so that's really all I think it can offer. I can offer them, encouraging words and friendship.
Chief, thank you so much for your time.